Hey guys, Tracy Pelfrey here. Happy Monday, September the 1st of 2025. It's awesome. I love this time of year. As an intro to this interview, I want to say this. I want to warn you that there are things covered regarding self-harm, suicide, that type of thing. I also want to say that I did not realize this, but I guess back several years ago, the suicide hotline changed from a 10-digit number to a 3-digit number. It's called the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's available 24 hours in English and Spanish, and it's 988. And I want to put that out there because I don't know where you might be in your life or someone you know. So that's a good number to tuck away and have available, I think. I want you to think as you listen to this, no matter what your thoughts are about certain things, I'm going to ask you not to knee-jerk react. I'm speaking to a young man who was brought up in NTCC. I personally knew him and his family when we arrived in Graham in 1992 for their fake school. And so he's going to share some things and maybe mention some names, and they are his earliest recollections. And so give him that, okay? Give him that and put it in the context of, I think what has been profound for me is the fact that sometimes what we put our children through, that's the thing. It's not about, like for all of this, for me, it's not about me. It's about my children. That's what compelled me. But it's about, and the other thing that compelled me was the whole thing about the lost kids of NTCC. And if you don't know about that, it's in the earliest videos and things that I wrote about that compelled me to begin doing this a couple of years ago. The kids are written off, even Mike Heckel's the reason why PKs, preacher's kids, leave. He just has the lowdown. He just has all the answers. He has nothing. He knows nothing. He's an unloving, ignorant fool. So I'm going to ask you to listen with compassion and listen to this testimony of someone who is sharing their heart and their recollections. And we can't come back in and say, no, you're remembering that incorrectly, or maybe you know the intent of something from the time. But this was from a child's point of view, being recollected by a 30-something-year-old in hindsight, looking back. And I really hope that those with children in and out, even if you're out and your kids are out, talk to them, help them, love them. It's our supreme responsibility, I think, as parents. I grew up in a generation where the kids had to always go groveling to the parents as if they owed them because they gave them life, because they had sex, and you were the collateral damage. You were the byproduct. No, that's not the way it goes. In my mind, it's the parents that need to reach out to the children and embrace the children and love the children and help them and see if they need help. You don't have to be... I'll just share this before I press on. When my girls were younger, I think we lived in Puyallup, and they were going to Ridgecrest Elementary School. And they'd come home, they'd hop off the bus, and what do kids want to do? They don't want to tell you about their day. They want to go live the rest of their day. They want to run around like maniacs and scream and ride bikes and fall down and leap and just have a snack, be kids. But we want to know, how was your day? How'd it go? What'd you do? What'd you learn? What happened? They don't want to talk about it then. It's good. It was good. But I always found I learned over time, stop asking them that when they get off the bus. Let them go play. Because it would usually happen that during bath time for each of them was when, like, I would just draw their bath, get them ready, and then they would start talking, either then or before they fell asleep, lying there in bed. I didn't have to coax it. They would just say, Mommy, you know what happened today? This or that. And sometimes just creating that environment where a child feels they can at least say something. They don't have to worry that you are going to come down on them because the child isn't conforming to NTCC standards. And I don't care how much Mike claims and brags that he's lightened up on standards, which should tell you a lot to begin with about what they should have been all along. You just have to create that environment and not try to pry it out of a grown adult child or a young child with a crowbar or something, okay? Like you're trying to break and enter. And I took that away from this with young Master Ruben, is that children definitely get the short end of the stick. I mean, outside of those that have been abused in this group, abused physically, abused mentally, abused as children. And there was no one there. The parent needs to be there. The parent needs to be there. Don't ever side with that group. Don't side with them over your own children. You're going to side with the likes of Mike Keckle and Phil Kinson and Joe Olson. This is the type of people that have created this mess. So I don't care if you're a grown adult child, if you are the parent of a young child, talk to them, love them. Oh my God, love on them. Regarding mental health issues, NTCC loves to say, they absolutely have nothing but negative to say about therapists. Now, granted, there are bad doctors and therapists and everything out there. You have to be careful about who you choose. But here's the thing. They'll tell you if you pray and you're not healed, let's say of a bodily misfunction, right? You have cancer or you broke something or whatever it is, then they tell you go to the doctor. But they don't do the same for mental health, do they? They don't say if you've prayed and you still have issues, mental issues, and you're struggling and you're grappling and how many people while we were bipolar and had episodes, very public episodes. Some played out before all of us in church. They needed medication. Some people do. They won't acknowledge that because they don't want you talking to anybody. They don't want you talking to anybody about what may or may not be going on in your life because it will include them. And that is my personal opinion on that part. But the other part where you could listen to almost any NTCC preacher, and that's what they're going to say. They're going to come down hard against therapy. They're going to mock it. They're going to mock the doctors. There are doctors now out there, fortunately, in the years since I've gotten out of this group, such strides have been made in the field of therapists who deal just specifically with people who have exited cults. There's very, very extremist cults. There's church cults of all kinds. The extreme nature of it has to do with how it affected you. And your situation is individual, and you don't have to listen to anybody just demoralize you or to knock it down to where it's insignificant. Don't listen to those people. They're unloving and uncaring. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Ruben Luciano Jr. My parents are still in NTCC, and I grew up as a pastor's son for much of my life in the organization.
Starting at about what age would you say?
So I spent pretty much my entire life, or I should say my formative years in the church. I would say as far back as I can remember, my memories are founded on NTCC.
And
So probably let's go back. Well, you asked how far. So I think my earliest memories are from around 1992.
okay.
And yes, my parents were seminary students in Graham, Washington at the time.
Right, and that's the year we arrived. I believe it was January 92, and I had the girls, little babies in tow, and you know, we knew your family, we fellowshipped with your family, and so I wanted to ask you, how do you think your parents will feel about you doing this interview?
My parents have shown me that they unconditionally love me, so I think they would be supportive and they would respect my decision to come on your podcast, if you will, here and just kind of speak my truth.
I love
Sure.
that you put in there that they love you unconditionally, because that's not the way it is for all preachers' kids
Mm-hmm.
who
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
leave the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of them just have a very cold demeanor about it, and it's not warm and loving and caring.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that you said that about them.
Well, like I was saying, my earliest memories go back to 1992, and they involve NTCC. I just remember just life being dominated by the church and going to people's homes for like children's church, or they would like watch the kids while, for example, parents were away, or there were conferences and so forth.
So in 92, you were about what,
I,
3?
I was around 3 years old.
Right.
I was 3 years old.
So
Yes.
your mom and dad were in school as we were in school, and so there was all the babysitting that occurred in each of our
Mm-hmm.
homes. Do you
Mm-hmm.
recall being in like a large group of kids for babysitting in someone's house, or is that too early of a memory?
No, I do. So I recall the children's church on I guess, the church grounds in Graham, Washington. And then I also recall just kind of being in different brothers and sisters' homes, um, just, let's say, that who live near the church, because they would sometimes babysit the kids while the parents were in seminary or attending church.
Right, exactly. Fun times.
Oh my
Well, they
goodness.
could be. I mean, friendships could be forged, but
Sure. Well, I did make friends. I definitely made friends that I some of them I'm still friends with to this day, and I would say even yourself. But I would say for the most part, I don't keep in touch with a lot of the people that I grew up with or from that time.
right, because you left at about what age?
Left the organization.
Yes.
So I would say um, I left in 2010. I was around 21 years old.
Oh, okay. So that's
Yes.
it's quite a span of time. So
Yes.
yeah. But you're how old now?
I'm 36 now.
Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
go ahead. You can just go ahead and continue with. I don't know where you want to go. I don't know if you want
Sure.
to say why you're doing this. Like, we reconnected.
Sure.
You've already been reconnected with my daughter Diana. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So to be honest, Tracy, I just feel like I've wrestled for so many years um, with just sharing my account of what I went through in NTCC. And it's very hard when you have kind of been programmed to not have a voice, to not have an identity. And yes, you're right. I did reach out to your daughter a number of years ago. Diana and I reconnected, and then of course you and I recently reconnected.
Yes.
But it was still very difficult to kind of talk about like the particulars of NTCC and the traumas and just all of the trials that I went through and that I saw others go through in my family.
Yes.
So I feel so I just feel like this burden upon my heart just to share because I'm also in the process of writing a book about it. I think I'm around 6,000 words in right now.
Wow.
About my life, my life in NTCC.
And really, it's very difficult when, after we leave, one of the things, especially people who have had traumatic experiences, you don't just like strike up a conversation with new friends. So, hey, did I tell you about that time I was in a church cult? It doesn't happen that way. We That makes us so vulnerable, and where do you even start? At least with people like this, we've been in, and even though our experiences vary, we can totally relate to what, at least have some sort of compassion for someone on what they have gone through. Do you feel like that's true?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think part of my reason too for kind of coming out and just sharing my account is that I hope that young children, especially who are still in that cult, will maybe hear this, or even let's say their parents, and see the light, and I should say, and see really what this organization is about, especially the leadership, how many people they've harmed, how many people's lives they've destroyed, families. They've destroyed so many good men and women throughout the
Yes.
years, and I was a firsthand witness to a lot of that.
You know, you said something that's really, I hadn't even really thought about, is that for people, especially who are in, but even people who are out, who may, I don't know what their viewpoint is after they leave, but it's nice to have the child's perspective. What was it like for them? And what may it be like for my children right now, either sitting next to me on the pew, being carted around to all these events and church things, and I'm not even in tune to them because I'm dealing with myself. And I think on some level, as parents, we've all been somewhat guilty of that. So that's why I really appreciate your perspective. It's a male perspective. Diana and you are the same age pretty much, and I interviewed her. But this is nice that you're a PK kid, and as they're referred to in NTCC, and so I think it will be valuable. Can I ask something that I'd like you to speak to is maybe the early years and some of your memories. Now, I have notes from when we spoke the other night and when you were talking, and I thought there was some interesting points of view from a child's point of view, really, because how old were you when your family went to start the church in Los Angeles?
So I was around 5 years old, I believe, because my parents and I moved to Los Angeles, California in '94, and I had turned 5 in January, and I believe we arrived in March of that year.
And when you
Um,
got there,
yes.
what was life like?
Yeah, so I'll back up a little bit.
Yes.
So we moved from Washington when I was, let's say, around 3 or 4 years old, because we went to help a couple in Boise, Idaho. I think we were there for around 8 or 9 months.
Oh, really? I forgot
Um,
about that.
yes, yeah, we were there for around 8 or 9 months, and I believe that couple, they've since left the cult.
Okay.
Um, and but my dad always felt it on his heart that God wanted him to start a church in Southern California, specifically Los Angeles. So we ended up packing up our bags and moving further south.
Right. Way
And
further.
yes,
And when you got there, now, you said you were alone at first, your family, but the Masons did eventually join you, right? Not long after?
They did around 3 months after, yes.
Okay. So you're in, when you were in Boise, what were some of your memories there? See, I didn't even know that part. Who was there then? Can you say?
Yes, well, they've since left the church. The Cortezes, they
Oh,
were
okay.
there.
Okay.
Yes,
So,
and
so not Chico Cortez, the one who passed away, I believe it was last year or the year before, but his brother
no,
and his wife Robin, right?
I believe so. Unfortunately, Tracy, I don't even
Yeah.
know their first names.
Oh, well, they didn't have
So
any
yeah,
children, right?
they didn't have any
Okay,
children.
that was
No.
the other Cortez, probably. Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. I mean, it's kind of a hodgepodge of memories. I remember like the state capitol building in downtown Boise. I remember my parents and I visiting, I believe it was a Hispanic family. It seemed like the middle of nowhere. And I think I tried guacamole for the first time. I think the church was in a very small storefront, and I remember Reverend Cortez. He would sometimes kind of chide me when I had my head up during the altar call. I just remember that, and I just remember his wife. She seemed like she was kind of nervous, very shy. I didn't really interact with her a lot, but that's kind of all I really remember
Well,
of
you
Idaho.
said chiding. Do you mean like in a joking way or in a almost reprimanding way?
In a reprimanding way.
Hmm.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
something about
Yeah,
what?
like put my head down. He was basically reprimanding me to put my head down and pray.
Phew.
And I was 4 years old.
Yeah. Not only
So
that,
yeah.
you wonder where that comes from because I don't know. If you're just going to be a purist and read the Bible and go with that, I don't know. I didn't
Well,
remember that being a thing.
yeah. Well, I think it comes from NTCC culture. Just kind of the running theme back then that children, including your girls, were to be seen and not heard.
Yes,
We
so
were
true.
just kind of unnecessary things that were lying around, and we needed to make sure we never embarrassed our parents, never embarrassed the church.
Right,
That was how we were taught, and adults treated us the same way.
right, and that's unfortunate. Fortunately, when you went to Los Angeles, it was your own parents who were the pastor,
Yes,
and then the Masons
yes,
came, and they have two children, right?
yes, they do.
Yeah, and so something that you told me, and I don't know how long this lasted when you were there, but can you describe for us the living conditions and the church setup when you got there?
Yes. So to be honest, I don't remember the very first place that we had, but I do remember one of the early ones. We were living, the Masons, who were four, and the Lucianos, my family, three. So we were living in a big room. And there was a room down the hall. So we were actually living, I think, next to a swap meet. And there was another room that served as a sanctuary. And we didn't have access to like a regular shower. We would bathe in a sink in the bathroom that was down the hall from the room that all seven of us stayed in. The sanctuary, I believe, there was this big white pulpit. I remember it was just very ornate, probably the most beautiful possession that we had, or really it belonged to the church. And then we had some metal folding chairs set up, and I just remember there would just be a couple of people coming to church at that time.
Right. And you said a big room, and I meant to ask you about this the other day. Are you talking about like a storefront?
So it was, I mean, kind of like a storefront, but it was honestly like a room that would probably, yeah, serve as like some kind of business.
Mm,
You wouldn't actually, or shouldn't have had people living there.
right, right. And not two families and not seven.
Exactly.
And I have heard from some men who were single brethren who went out to start churches, who did stuff like that, who lived in a back room. And I don't know. I wonder, I just have to wonder. Part of me really wants to hope that someone was concerned for your families back in Graham, for how you were living, if only for the sake of the kids. Your parents weren't trying to be, I don't believe, just from knowing them, I don't believe they were trying to be like harmful to you kids or themselves. They were trying to sacrifice to get the gospel out. I believe that, but I don't know. What are your thoughts now looking back?
Yes, and I would find that throughout the years, for example, that my parents, of course, they were very young when they started the work in LA. And I think they were just trying to figure it out. They both had not grown up in church, so they were very impressionable. They felt they were doing the work of God, and that we should live kind of these frugal lives. And of course, that was also what they were taught by at the NTCC leadership and the seminary. So yes, I think they were just doing really what they were told.
Right. It reminds me, and it's from the same time frame, of Davis teaching in his class, and I'm almost sure your parents would have been in there with me, with him saying, you come there to the Bible school to leave, not to stay. And through the years, and even now, it seems like a lot of people stay because there's all these ministry. Somebody's got to run the camera, somebody's got to run the slideshow, and it's nothing like it was then. We lived below frugality, way below the poverty line, and here you guys were living that for the sake of the gospel in Los Angeles. While to me, what's always is the disparity and the juxtaposition of how Davis was living and how the Keckles were living and how they've never had to go and live that way. They don't know what it's like. Honor should be given, if you're going to give it to anyone in that group, to people like your parents who were willing. And I don't know how long it took them to get away from that situation. Do you think it took a while?
I think so. I think because my dad was, I mean, we were struggling. He was just trying to find odd jobs. I remember he was in insulation for a while back then. And
Everybody
so we
was.
kind of, yeah, so we kind of just jumped around. I mean, sometimes we slept in our car. I do remember that.
What?
Yeah, sometimes we did. Sometimes we didn't have a place to stay. Sometimes, like I was saying, we lived in a big room that really should have been set aside for a business. Throughout my childhood years, we often lived in a travel trailer. And I remember my dad one time telling Davis that we lived in a trailer, and Davis just matter of factly told him, "Oh well, like good for you." I mean, he didn't seem to care.
And were you guys like sleeping on beds in that big room?
No, no, I think we had some blankets. We none of us had a bed. None of the seven people in
Oh
in
my
that room
God.
had a bed. Yes.
That's so distressing. And how did you eat and stuff?
So I remember Sister Mason she used to make a lot of kimchi. I still can see her sitting cross-legged on the floor, and she would have these jars of kimchi around her. And a lot of times, to be honest, I know we ate very simple things like ramen, hot dogs, fish sticks, and tater tots. That was pretty much what we ate. Once in a while, we'd go out to eat, maybe to McDonald's or something.
Wow. And Mason, he worked? Did he
I
work?
believe. I mean, he was struggling like my dad at first,
Yeah.
but yes, he eventually did get a job. I know at some point after that big room we all stayed in, my parents ended up getting an apartment, and the Masons stayed with us for a while. So it was seven of us to an apartment. and then they eventually got an apartment in the same complex.
Wow. So that was worse than Bible school. Bible school, when we were there, when we were all there, we all, you commiserated, but you didn't do it in a whiny way. It was almost like you were, like you willingly did that. That's just what you did for God and for the sake of the gospel. But I wonder for how long you guys live that way. I don't understand, I guess. I really would wonder, and I know that's not something you can tap into probably from a child's memory, but is, what did the organization know and how much did they know? And, if they had helped in any way or anything. I don't know. It just seems so, and you're just two families, never mind all the others. We all have our tales to tell of what that was like to go out and scratch something out with nothing really, because you would be trying to save money because Davis was like, you should have such and such amount to go, but then he'd pull one of these tricky trickster moves. That was the thing. You were supposed to have a certain amount of money to leave. $5,000 is in my mind. There was no way any of us could earn that. The women weren't allowed to work strictly, even though they are now. They're working, a lot of them. And so then he pulls this thing where you'd have like a revival service or something, like a week of him preaching every night. And he'd say, all of you, you should just go. Like, it's just time to go. And everybody's like, yeah, it's time to go. Yeah. You're just so hyped in the mosh pit down there around the old-fashioned altar that's what you do, and you're not ready, and you get out on the road in winter across the country and you're like, what are we doing? It hits you. And it just seems like your families were two other families who were in that kind of predicament.
Yes. No, we were
And there's children. You were children. I mean, did you have
we were
clothes? Did you
children.
go to school? I mean, were you outcast at school? What was that like?
So, I mean, yes, Rob, the Mason's children and I did go to school. But at school, I just began to, how can I say this exactly? I began to just see these kind of like, I don't know, a separation between like my life and school. And for example, a lot of my teachers were women. And like you just said, a lot of women, of course, the women in NTCC could not work.
Right.
And so that was something as a little boy, I just thought, okay, that's strange. These women seem like they're independent. They're actually making money. They seem happy.
Right.
And to be honest with you, education became very, very important to me because I just saw in the church, and it wasn't just my parents' satellite church, but just in the churches throughout NTCC, that people just kind of accepted what the minister or the pastor said, and they didn't really question anything.
Right.
And from a very early age, I just thought, I don't want to be like that.
Yes.
So I guess in a way, NTCC inadvertently made me a bit of a rebel.
You're rebelling against them, right?
Yes. Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Which
Absolutely.
needed to be, which I think that's what I admire so much. I can look around just in NTCC up in Graham and see some of the, whether it's Jeff Malone or the Keckles or Kinson's nephew. I don't know if Devin, I don't know if he is in the church or not. He wasn't. Ripka's son. So you start to look at all these people who are up there, and where are the kids? And I admire them if they, I mean, I don't want to see anybody in a bad place, but unfortunately, when we'll call rebellion happens, many times the parents become uninvolved in that child's life. And
Yes.
It seems like hopefully that wasn't the full case for you. Parents are limited. They're there in their post and they're not supposed to leave it,
Right. Well, I think my parents, like, many other parents in NTCC were taught, right, that I mean, even if the church didn't say love was conditional, that essentially that it was.
Yes.
I remember post preaching one time in fellowship meeting about, well, if your kids leave the church, well, just let them leave and you stay in the church. And there was always this emphasis,
Yes.
I remember, on the church, and that no matter what happened, you always stayed in the church. It didn't matter if it was your kids or your mom or your dad who didn't want to be in it anymore, or you just kind of let them go, essentially forsake them, but you stayed.
Right. Right. That's it. And you said who was preaching that at the time? Post?
Post,
Yeah.
yes.
I had his kids too
Yes.
in babysitting. And that's interesting. But that's totally in line with the organization. He wasn't
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't a rebel for saying that. If anything, those of us who didn't preach or teach it, we were the rebels
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for not doing that. Well, go ahead, Ruben.
Yeah, so I mean, just, I think you were really asking about the beginnings of my life. And
Yes.
yeah, so it was dominated by NTCC. We went to church 5 times a week. I think it was Tuesday night Bible study, Thursday night service, Saturday night service, Sunday morning, and Sunday evening.
And then was there soul winning in between that?
And then there was a lot of soul winning, and even as kids, we had to go with the adults and knock on doors. And I remember how awkward I felt just doing that, and just I think not just not really believing in what I was like trying to peddle to these people. I think at a very young age, I just realized that there was no love in the church, or very few people, in my experience, loved or really showed, I guess, God or that all that. And so for myself, I just kind of withdrew into myself.
Yes.
I didn't feel comfortable around a lot of people. You mentioned a couple people from the board, like Kinson and Keckle. I never felt comfortable around those people when they'd come to fellowship meetings, or we'd see them in the campground in Missouri.
Right. You said something that was, I won't say it was profound, but it was something I forgot about, and that was when you were in Graham, when we all were, before you went to Boise, that what was an earliest memory you had of the fellowship hall?
So I think when you and I were talking the other day about the fellowship, I think that was actually when I lived in California, and we went to a conference.
Oh, okay.
Missouri. Yes.
All right.
And I think we were talking about this too, but I do remember Sister Figueroa saying that she let people spank her kid, and I remember just how that didn't seem right to me.
That would be scary as a kid. Because then you're like, can anybody just wail on me?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I just was floored. It didn't seem right. It didn't seem natural for a mother to say that.
Right.
And that stayed with me for over 30 years. So yes. So some of my just earliest memories are of the children's church. I just remember, I guess I would misbehave sometimes. Keckle would tell me years later that I used to always eat my tie. He would always lead with that, and I felt so awkward.
So when
I would talk to him. Yeah, it was very strange. He did that every single time, and I mean, I would be 16 years old, and what 16-year-old boy wants to hear that they ate their tie when they were 3 years old?
It almost shows someone who either has zero interest, so they just go to their default story that they have for you, instead of making new memories with you to recall in future times. It's just someone who leans on that, and there's no more depth to it than that.
Right, exactly.
Well, you mentioned something about the fellowship hall too.
Yes. So the fellowship hall, my goodness, just thinking about it is a little triggering. But I just remember how it was just a little detail, and I know I mentioned this to you, but there was that one table. I think it was in like the bottom right corner of the building, and there were these glasses. I think they had red and black designs on them, and they were always like turned upside down. And everyone knew that that was the exclusive table. That's where Davis and the
The
other
board
members of the board
members.
sat.
Right.
And then at the other tables, you just see these styrofoam cups and these just soda cans.
I don't know if they did it when you were in there, but Sarah reminded me when I told her, I said, look at this kid. He remembered from when he was young about the the fact that the board members had their own special table and they had glass stuff and they had regular plates. They didn't have styrofoam anything. And they would sit there and watch everybody and humiliate people. And then over
Yes.
time, the brothers would pull up chairs to hear what the sage had to say, the wise old sage, you know. And
Right.
I really thought about that the other night. I thought that was really something that you remembered that detail. And I think we spoke of the layering of things that you notice, whether it's something big and
Right.
monstrous or whether it's something like I get a glass and you don't.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think in the fellowship hall, it was, you know, I never felt comfortable there. Of course, I never really felt comfortable in any of NTC's buildings, but it was just like I always felt like, let's say I was on display or there was someone who was watching me or judging me. And it was always the little things, Tracy, just the little things like McBrair's wife telling my mom after my mom introduced me to her, oh, I didn't expect your son to look like that.
Meaning
And
what?
I still to this day, I don't know. I don't know. But I will tell you this. I
You
mean, she
look
was
like a
a
product of
McBrair.
your mom and dad, really. Good grief.
So I didn't know what to make of that. Or Verna Davis always coming up to me in the fellowship hall and saying, oh, when are you coming to seminary? Never asking about what I liked or disliked or what I
No.
wanted to be. It was always about when I
Yes.
was going to seminary. I was so scared of Davis. I just remember he scared he just scared me so much. I never could really go up to him and or do anything. And I think just most of the people in the fellowship hall, in the church itself, scared me. And I just remember thinking I could never trust these people. Robert Mason was my best friend. I mean, the Mason's son.
Yes.
Him and I were confidants, and it's really unfortunate. It still breaks my heart to this day that he's homeless. He's a casualty of NTCC. He deserved a lot better, and I think his sister Veronica as well. But he was the only person I could really trust. And outside of that, I just always felt like I was on guard, like I was going to war. I never felt comfortable
Well,
there.
right. And of course, because Davis himself was not endearing, so neither
No.
were the men who were on the board, pretty much. It would either be someone just really quiet and stoic or
Mm-hmm.
just just very surfacey stuff. And kids
Mm-hmm.
know when someone is interested in them or not. And Verna did that to everybody. She did it to all the kids. She asked the girls who were they interested in. She asked the boys who they're interested in. She cared about the young girls doing their hair a certain way to attract men with money. This is not just one, two, three people. This is a lot. It was what she did. That was her
Mm-hmm.
ministry and shopping. And that how does that it seems like church on any level, even if it's part of a Bible seminary, should be like a safe haven, right? Or a place
Yeah.
of refuge where you're like, oh, the world is out there swirling around me. I can come here among my brethren and
Mm-hmm.
feel loved and feel at home. And it wasn't that way.
It wasn't. It wasn't. And I think also people interpret messages differently. I know I did. So, and this is, I think we kind of got into this a little bit when you and I talked last, but I'll be straight up. I struggled with my sexuality just throughout my formative years because I felt that I couldn't really like girls, or if I thought anything about girls that was quote unquote carnal, that I would be judged and I would be going to hell. And that was constantly preached over the
Yes.
pulpit.
Yes.
And I think that NTCC stole that from me. Even as a 36-year-old man, I've never had that experience. And so I still feel resentment for that I could not explore. I could not, none of that. I felt that I was just I would be the worst sinner if I were attracted or all of that. And it was hard for me to just, people would say, oh, well, you're good looking, or, any girl would like you, or, you're going to end up, you're going to end up married one day and with kids and the work. And I would think to myself, no, I don't think I want that for my life. I don't think I want to be miserable.
Right.
With
And
someone
that's
I
what you
don't
saw,
love,
wasn't
and I
it?
don't care. Yes,
Right.
yes,
And
yes.
and what you also saw, what we all saw, especially those of us who came in married outside of the whole setup there in Graham, were people who really didn't get the chance to know one another. It became
Right.
woefully obvious, especially with the rate of divorce and remarriage. And kids talk, kids see things. And no matter what is said over the pulpit, the way you behave, the way adults behave with their own children or others, it's pretty lasting. And they created an environment up there. There's still people your age or a little older who, or even a little younger, still not married or anything. It makes you wonder, like, okay, this is odd because they try to hook everybody up. They try to hook everyone up. So, are there people in the group right now who are struggling with what their whole sexuality is? Or
Yes.
have they come to terms with it, but it doesn't fit the narrative? And then I wonder why they stay. Like, it's not normal for kids who are super hormonal. I learned as a kid in the 70s, early 80s, that, I didn't even, I know things are different now. I know you have to acknowledge that. There's things that will show kids, they can go watch how to have sex, whatever, with almost everything, with a doorknob, whatever. They can just see a tutorial on it. But when you just forbid everything and not allow for the normalcy of those teen years of trying to navigate it, figure it out, and having a little crush on someone, and maybe going out for a burger or something together and talking, and have things happen naturally. There wasn't and hasn't been still a lot of that, and that has to be problematic. How can it not be? It's not normal.
Absolutely.
It's
It's
against your
not. And
humanity.
I agree with you. And I think it just kind of harkens to a deeper question, a deeper problem with the NTCC culture, in that they just kind of bury or hide things that are counter, if you will, to their teachings. Sexual orientation, let's say someone liking someone of the same sex, or mental health issues. I remember seeing so many young men in the dorms on the campground who had very deep issues. I realized as a teenager, and I was going through my own stuff, but I realized, wow, these adult guys, they have a lot of issues.
Now, how were you privy to that?
So I used to stay on the campground when we would go to conference, stay in the dorms.
Okay, in Missouri.
Yes, and there were a lot of men. Well, of course, there were only men in the dorm, in the male dorms,
right.
And these men would a lot of times talk about, well, that they wanted to get a wife, that they wanted to start a work, and I would just kind of listen to their conversation. I often was just a quiet bystander because I was still trying to find my voice, and I would just observe them, and I would think, wow, like kind of what woman would want to date you? I mean, you have some serious issues. You really have some serious
Right, and will
issues,
she even get the chance to know that when
and yes,
you have speed
and
dating?
absolutely. And I think what breaks my heart though is that some of these men, they really they were really trying. They were really trying to make a good life, whether they got married or not. There's one man who just stands out to me, and I think about him sometimes. His name is Gabe. He was, I believe, a Marine. I think he was stationed in Oceanside, California. And Gabe was a good guy. I think he was a little hyper. He was a little, maybe it's ADD. Who knows? But I think he was a good person. But he just fell under the radar of NTCC. I think he really needed some therapy. I think he needed help. I don't think he got it. Well, he definitely didn't get it in NTCC.
No, they don't promote it.
And they don't. They don't. Therapy's never talked about.
No.
And I just remember just this sadness that I always sensed about him. And of course, him and I never talked about it, but I saw so many people like that.
Yeah.
I want to bring up another young man who I can still see his face to this day. I remember I was in the sanctuary of the campground, and Jonathan Rodriguez, I'm sorry, Jonathan Espinoza, and I remember he just turned around, looked at me. He didn't know me. I didn't know him. But I just remember seeing this sadness on his face. And
About how old would you say he was? Like, was he in the Bible school or something? Or?
he was. So I don't know if he ever went to Bible school, but he was. I think he was a teenager. He might have been 1 or 2 years older than I was. And he just seemed so pitiful. He seemed so like an abandoned puppy.
Yeah.
And I found out a couple of years later that he killed himself, and it was like no one talked about this. It was like he had never existed.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that. That really, really bothered my spirit. Like, I just felt, wow, people are just, they're so disposable. And these folks do not care.
Wow, that's a great way to put it. And isn't that the time to gather people together and say, brethren, because he's not the first one. Now, to be fair, are there people outside of NTCC who take their own lives? Of course. But this culture, especially during the time where I can speak to and you can speak to when we were in, it was about muzzling you. You muzzled yourself. You did not reveal yourself even to those you felt closest to because you didn't know who would tell on you. Even though you'd say, well, I know this person. We've known each other since servicemen's homes days or whatever. You didn't know because once you get to Graham, you understand. There's an understanding, even with your own spouse. I'm not going to open up about anything I see or think that is contrary. And it's meant to be that way. We're all little islands.
Right. Exactly.
All
And
alone.
and they exactly, and they do that because they look at it, well, if we divide, we can easily conquer.
Yes.
And it's so sad that, I mean, even you and your ex-husband and your daughters, I never really knew you guys. Like, I've kind of come to know you now, and you didn't know my parents or I either. And that was intentional on their part,
Right.
on NTCC's part.
It was just very surfacey. You knew where
Yes,
people came from, especially like she and I, your mom and I are from the same part of the country. And so there's that, familiar way and just cutting up and laughing about things, but never doing like what I do now. Like you have conversations with your friends and you're on the phone for a while and you're talking about things and you're helping each other and you're learning about because you care about each other's families and then if there's a need maybe you can help out, but that's not that's not the format up there. And there are people
Right.
hurting even right now, but through the years.
Mhm.
And who who brings up to pray for people or to gather them and say, hey, let's talk
Mhm.
about some things. If you guys need help, let's try to get you some help. If your kids need help, if you're going, if you see that this person committed suicide, took their life, and you're
Mhm.
struggling,
Mhm.
let's all get
Mhm.
together and nothing.
Right. None of that. I mean, we didn't have any of those resources. We didn't have any of that love. And I was sharing this with you the last time we talked, that as a kid, I would look at that beautiful white pulpit with the big black letters of God is love, and I, I didn't feel it. I
No.
just didn't feel it in that sanctuary. And
You're talking about the new well, both
oh no,
sanctuaries, right?
in the campground. Oh yes, and
Oh, the
yes,
campground,
I
right? The campground too has it.
yes, in the campground, and
Yeah.
I didn't feel it either in the sanctuary in Graham either. I just remember too, well, as a 16-year-old teenager, Spencer Hayes asking Malone about his son Jonathan, and I think that was a pivotal moment for me in realizing that NTCC really did not care about people and families when Malone told two teenage boys that his son was running away from the Lord, and he just made this dramatic gesture of him of his son running away, and I just looked at the man and I thought, that's not the answer you should be giving to us. There's no love, there's no concern.
No.
And there were just so many different incidents that I had like this, where I just realized these people, like, if I just maybe dropped dead, they would not care. They just wouldn't care. So I withdrew. Like I said, I withdrew into myself. I remember Ashmore one time coming to church, the star minister, if you will, the featured minister, and
Now,
he
where
had
was this?
asked.
Put this in context.
This was in California.
Okay. Was he an
We had a
overseer at the time?
He was an overseer,
Okay.
and he was going around to different churches,
Right.
and he came by ours, and he had basically commanded us to come, the whole congregation, to come up to the altar and kind of pray and ask for, I don't know, penance for our sins. And I just felt at that time I was really struggling with my sexuality, and I just remember him just asking God to, like, just pray the gay out of me, and my dad just right there, and I felt so alone and like abandoned, and I felt so exposed. And
So he prayed that out loud?
he did. So it was just, I was just exposed. I was exposed to everyone.
So no one, how did he know? Was he knowledgeable about what your inclinations were?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't, but he just exhorted us all to go to the altar and to just seek forgiveness for our sins. And
So
I
you
mean,
never told him, and
I
your
never told him.
parents
I
never
never
told him.
told him.
Wow.
And
So
my parents never told him.
wow.
And so it was like, well, if I stayed in my seat, I was doing something wrong. That's how I felt.
Oh, well, they always do
And
that. Yeah. And yet, and so
and
what they're
yeah,
making it is almost like a works thing, that the
right.
position of your body is important and it
Yes.
should be where the preacher tells you to go.
Exactly. Exactly.
And how did
And
that
so
help you? Not at all.
it was traumatic. You know, I think about it to this day. I One of my good friends, she ended up leaving the church, and she said, you know, what that minister did was so wrong. She said, if one of my children came out, she said, I would never have them go through what you just went through.
Well, let me ask you
And
this. After
mhm.
the whole prayer time, did anyone approach you and say anything, like your parents or anyone?
No, no, no. And that was just, classic NTCC. You just
Yes, it is.
pretend that it didn't happen, and so it didn't happen because we just push it under the rug and keep moving forward. That incident scarred me.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody wants to be. It's one thing if you came to him and said, "Sir, I'm struggling with things, or I'm feeling certain things, and not really sure what to do because I'm brought up in the church and I know what's taught and everything by NTCC." So, and then shouldn't there be a form of compassion and but to make a show of something, I don't know. I'm very sorry that you had to go through that. Is that something that you've ever spoken about with either him or your parents since then?
So I've never spoken with Ashmore. I have spoken with my parents numerous times about it.
Yeah.
And I have let them know how much it traumatized me. They have expressed how sad and sorrowful they are that happened. And yes, it was, yeah, it was, let's just say it was a very low point in my life.
Right, right.
And I think it also kind of went into the larger narrative for me in my life at that time of kind of my active attempts trying to commit suicide. So I struggled with that from 13 to 23 because I just didn't. I felt like such a misfit. I felt like I couldn't ever live up to the expectations that were expected of me in NTCC.
You spoke to me about one particular instance, and I was really thinking about that the other night. That what is it that happens in your head that you feel like I can't go on? And is it and that's where when we speak about mental health too, like you can't just say to everybody, just pray, it'll go away. He took my cigarette smoking away. He can take that away. And that's just such a I don't know.
Well, what went through my head was just hopelessness. I didn't feel I could, like I said, live up to the expectations that I could measure up. I felt exposed. I felt like maybe I was letting everybody down, including my parents. So I just would feel, and I think I was kind of always, this has always been kind of part of my personality where I would blame myself for a lot of things. So I would just try to kill myself sometimes. I remember being in a dark closet and trying to put tie a silk tie around my neck and just off myself.
Wow.
And or swallowing some, I think they were like, I don't know if they were vitamin pills or uh, this was a little later on, maybe in my late teens, early 20s, when I scaled a fence by the freeway, and I thought about just like running down into the freeway and just having a car just run over me. Just felt that I couldn't live. I felt so much pain. I felt so much anguish, and I just felt so invisible. And I didn't have a voice to express how I felt, or that if I tried to, I'd just be shot down. I was just listening to the preaching. I was just feeling more and more condemned. And it was just, for me, there was just no love in that preaching. It was just legalism. It was judgment. It was people saying, oh, if you do this, if you do that, you're of the world and you're wrong. And there was just no one I could really turn to. And so I just remember I was like, well, maybe just killing myself would be the answer. And so yes, I struggled with that for 10 years.
Well, when you would think that way, what were your considerations about your family? Now, everyone says, you hear it, it's the typical thing you say is it's a selfish thing to do. It doesn't consider the people left behind, but people who say that, it's not a balanced approach because it also doesn't consider we don't know what's going on in the mind of a person who will actually there's people who talk about it a lot and make crazy like I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself. One day I'm just going to but it's really the people who are silent who just
Mhm.
do it
Mhm.
or make attempts to do it. At that time, when you were feeling that way, did you consider what it would do, say, to your parents if you killed yourself? Or did that
I
just not,
a
were
lot
you
of
blurred
times
in your mind or
to
what?
to to be honest with you, I struggled with my parents loving me. I didn't think for a long time that they did. The church was so prioritized, and my parents were a lot of times helping other people and helping other people's kids and mentoring and
Wow.
counseling other people's kids. And I thought, hey, I'm your son. I'm struggling here. I'm really going through a lot. And I wasn't perfect. I mean, I was not a perfect kid. There were
Who
things I
is?
did.
What kid is?
Um,
I mean, for real.
but I was crying out for help. And even
Yes.
as a kid, I just remember I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I would scratch myself. I would scratch my face, and to be honest, in the moment, I didn't understand, like, why am I doing this? But really, it was a cry for help. I needed, I was like, I need attention. I need you to focus on me. I'm struggling.
Right.
So
Were
to
you in
get back to
school
your
at the
question,
time? Were you in public school at the time that you did
I
that?
think I think I might have been in like kindergarten or first grade. I was very little. I
Mm.
was very little.
Because usually
But
people will
yeah,
pick up on that at the school and ask
yeah.
questions.
Well, I do remember I think she was my kindergarten teacher. She, in a progress report, she put that I was very hard on myself, and
Oh,
that stayed with me because I have always been like that on myself,
right.
with myself. And so I think honestly, with my parents, I just thought, well, they probably won't care. And I would ask my dad sometimes. I was like, "Do you love me?" I would ask my mom that. "Do you love me? Was I a mistake?" And so I think that fueled sometimes my confusion or just the darkness I was feeling in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest with you, it was just despair. I mean, there was not. It was like I couldn't see beyond that despair, and so I've learned to understand that, yes, when people say, "Oh, well, it's a selfish act," I think a lot of times people haven't even reached that, and what I mean by that is, like, they're just like, I can't go on just for myself. Like, I
Right.
can't even think about anyone else.
Right.
I'm in so much pain. I'm so just devastated, or just I feel so worthless that maybe it would just be better for everyone if I wasn't here.
Right. No.
And that's how I often
And
felt.
that has to be acknowledged. And I think that's a great point you brought out about the parents in NTCC. And I'm sure we did the same to our girls, even though I like to think that wasn't true, because when we were in Pittsburgh, we hauled them out in the freezing cold to knock on doors, and you try to make it almost like a game or fun. And people would invite us in their homes, or, oh, the girls are so cute. But I know they would make little comments like, why are you out with your little kids? And you're thinking, you're showing them God and sacrifice and duty and commitment. But really, you are pointing out a great thing that I think has gone on in NTCC. No matter how sweet and nice the parents, you don't even realize you're doing it. That
Right.
your own children are falling by the wayside and you're not even noticing.
Hmm.
That just breaks my
Yeah.
heart.
And in my parents' defense, I've seen my parents. They went through a lot too. They did.
They
They
did.
went through so many things, and I
Yes.
know you guys did too. And really, I think, like I've said, we were all really casualties of this cult, but just kind of, I think, in different areas of our journey.
Yes.
For
Yes.
me, of course, growing up in that and not having really any other frame of reference, and not really knowing a lot of people outside of that,
That's right.
outside of the organization.
No.
So,
No,
yeah.
and there's also that fear of even when we all got out is you don't, you feel embarrassed, you feel
Mhm.
humiliated because people told you you're in a cult,
Mhm.
and you're like,
Mhm.
no, I'm not. We just have standards, whatever was the thing. But
Mhm.
to not, it's really creepy to me that we can be so loving and really love our children, but maybe be so detached because the whole culture of this group is detachment from
Right.
each one, even your children. And you were telling me the other night that there was a time where you actually tried to follow through, right? On
Yes.
and what happened? Would you mind telling that?
And that was suicide, right?
Yes.
Well, there were multiple times, but yes, the incident, that I mentioned to you,
Yes. How old were you?
so I was actually in my early 20s. I had actually, so I think maybe a year or so before I had left NTCC, or I had attended the last conference that I would ever attend, and so I was actually staying in the church building that my parents were renting at the time. My dad and I had a conversation about like me being gay, and it was just a big thing, and so I got kicked out. So anyway, I think I spent the night in a bin outside of it was like a donation center, and I remember I didn't tell you this part,
No,
but
you didn't.
so I was just curling up in the bin, and I remember I think it was these folks, they were gonna, I guess, deposit some things in the bin, and they see me, they might have thought I was a dead body, and they just closed it down, so they just shut it so fast. And I remember how much that hurt me. I thought, wow, like, my God, like they were just like they were. I almost thought they were scared of me.
Right.
But anyway, the next day, so one of my friends, and actually this was the same friend who had seen Ashmore try to pray the gay out of me, maybe around 5 or 6 years before. She took me in. She was living with her mom at the time, and so I stayed with her for a couple weeks. And I wasn't able to stay with her anymore, and she said she had told me that I just wouldn't be able to stay anymore. So I was just I just despaired. I didn't know where I could go, so I just thought, well, maybe I should get rid just get rid of myself. And so I went near this reservoir, and there was like a chain link fence, and I climbed over and was just looking down in the reservoir. And honestly, if I had jumped, I don't know if I would have died. I might have been probably very seriously injured, but
Was it deep?
I no, there was no water, but it was. I mean,
Oh,
it was a ways. It was a ways. Yeah, it was a
okay.
ways. So anyway, I guess someone saw me. I still don't know who this person was who saw me, but they called the police or the authorities. And I remember there were fire trucks and police cars on both sides of this reservoir or aqueduct. I remember, I think it was a fireman. He came up to me and he was just trying to talk to me and say, you don't have to do this, and this and that. And I just, because I had climbed over, so if I had fallen, I would have fallen into the bottom of the reservoir.
Right.
And anyway, this fireman and I think some other like police officers, they ended up hauling me over the other side, and then they took me in an ambulance to a hospital. I remember in the ambulance there was, I think, a young man. I think he might have been one of the paramedics, and he was just saying, I think maybe he had broken up with his girlfriend or whatnot, but he told me, well, what if I had just killed myself? She would have been like, well, whatever. But he was like, I would have lost my life. My life is worth more than that. And a little later on, there was this nurse I spoke with, and she told me, and she said, what if you were to win the lottery tomorrow? You wouldn't even know because you wouldn't be here. And she said, just basically life is so precious. And I was placed in a 72-hour hold. And I just remember that was an experience too, just kind of being in locked down in a facility for people who maybe had tried killing themselves or who had mental conditions. And
And what was
actually,
that
I
like
think
on a day-to-day basis? Were you just in a room by yourself or?
so. I actually was. I think it was like a number of cots.
Mm.
that like where we slept, and I think they would give us Xanax sometimes. And I remember I felt really strange taking the Xanax, and I stopped. I was like, I can't keep taking this stuff because it makes me feel really weird. And I think my dad had visited, and we had just talked a little about just, what had happened and everything. And from there, I was discharged. And a friend who I had stayed with her at her mom's house, she ended up helping me to find a shelter that I ended up staying at for around 6 months. I was just so the shelter was basically like this rundown motel, and it was like two of us young men to a room. And I remember just interacting with a lot of different young men who had a lot of different issues. I mean, one young man had gone to prison. One young man thought that he was in communication with Megan Fox,
What?
that his teddy bear was Megan Fox. Yes, he literally thought that, and he just thought aliens were coming from space and were gonna just take over the planet. There were young men who had just serious issues that had been kicked out of their homes, or just kind of left by the wayside of society. And there was a really nice lady named Andrea, and she kind of became a mother figure to me. And she ran the program. And I remember her sister-in-law. She used to make us meals. She would prepare like burritos or get us McDonald's. And I just remember, even though I was at such a low point in my life, I mean, I'm homeless. I don't really have two nickels to my name,
Right.
that I felt some kind of stability, kind of for like one of the first times in my life. And I just remember another incident, and this is an incident that will always stay with me. There was a young man, his name was Bryce. We stayed in a room together, and he and I got in a fight. I think we wanted to kill each other. We were just really upset at one another. We both ended up being asked to leave the shelter, and I found out maybe around a year later, when I had ended up becoming secure in my housing situation, that Bryce had unfortunately been killed by the authorities when I think he had tried to rob a business.
Oh boy.
And and I just thought to myself, wow, that could have been me. That could have been me. There was
Yeah.
really no difference between Bryce and I.
Right.
And I always think about that because I think actually Bryce might have been even a little younger than me. I was only around 22 or 23 at the time. So
And that place you were
yes.
saying, the shelter, was that just like a
Mm-hmm.
just a place to what? Like what was the purpose of it? Just a place to stay pretty much and be warm? Did they
So,
was there like any kind of requirement after a certain point to get a job or anything like that?
so where the shelter was, so it was actually, I think it was a city program or something like that, or government program, and they actually, I think, rented some of these rooms in this motel. And
Mm-hmm.
we were required, I think there was a curfew. It might have been like 8 o'clock every night. The program coordinators, they tried to set us up with like work source centers so that we could end up finding employment. I ended up finding employment as a security guard, and that helped me to get a more stable housing situation. And sometimes we would be taken into the like downtown part of the city just to kind of talk with some counselors and therapists. So I just remember, again, even though it was a low point in my life, it was like I started finding stability, and I felt that people began to see me and that I was actually gaining an identity.
Of your
And
own.
that was a very pivotal, yes, that was a very, very pivotal time in my life. And I think I started realizing the strength that I had. I hadn't, I think, always thought of myself as a strong person, but I began to realize that I was strong, and that I was determined, and that I didn't want to remain homeless, and that I wanted to actually get back into college because I had left college for a couple of years. And the security job that I was able to end up getting, I had like a big loan that I had to pay off, and I was able to pay it off and
Wow.
go back to school, and I ended up getting my bachelor's degree.
And what was that in?
My bachelor's is in liberal studies.
Okay. And let me ask you this: during this time, when you're, in that shelter, and then up
Mm-hmm.
until when you get this job and you start moving ahead, who were the pivotal people in your life then, would you say?
So,
Did you
I
develop
ended up.
a relationship with your parents then, or had that not really occurred yet?
So, my parents did visit me, I think twice in the shelter, but we were still very distant.
Yeah.
And I ended up meeting my ex partner, who kind of became like a father figure to me as well as like a romantic partner. And I learned a lot from him, and he showed me a lot of love that had been missing in my life. And we're still very good friends to this day. And he helped me to get the room that I ended up renting after the shelter. I think around maybe a year or so later, my relationship with my parents started to improve a bit. It would take years, though. It would take years to get to where it is now. But yes, it started. It started to get better.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. And when you
Yeah.
you said you got a bachelor's degree, and what was the time frame? Because I mean, you said you weren't you an intern at the Library of Congress in Washington and went on to Howard
Yes.
University.
Yes. So I ended up. So after I got my bachelor's degree, I actually went to a Christian university too, Azusa Pacific University in Southern California, and I went there because I mean that's all I'd really knew. I'd been raised in a Christian environment, and so I ended up going there. And after I thought about pursuing, after I graduated from college, I decided that I wanted to pursue a PhD in history. I've always loved history. And so I originally thought about just staying in California, but I ended up applying to schools out of state. And so my first master's degree I completed at the University of Chicago. It's in social sciences. And then I completed another master's degree in health communication from Northwestern University.
Wow.
I stayed in Chicago for around 2 years. I worked at Costco at that time. And then I ended up being accepted to Tulane University for a PhD program in history, which I've nearly finished. I just have a couple revisions on my dissertation. From there, moved around a little bit, moved back to California from New Orleans, and then I ended up getting like I had mentioned to you, the internship at the Library of Congress, and I was only going to be in DC for 2 months, and I ended up getting a grant writer position at Howard. Got accepted to the law school, and I've completed
Wow.
1 year of law school at Howard. So, yeah, it's been quite a ride.
It's very uplifting because to see the journey and then to know someone can come out on the other side
Mhm.
is inspiring, because sometimes it doesn't feel that way when you're in the moment.
Yes, yes, and believe me, there have been a lot of struggles, a lot of nights where I thought, "What am I doing?" But I just I just felt like education, like I was saying before, is so important to me, and
Mm-hmm.
I believed that I need it was kind of like my salvation, quite frankly,
Yes, yes.
and it opened my eyes, and it opened my mind to just a lot of different things, and I realized how I grew up, that no, I didn't have to keep keep living in that anymore,
Right,
and I
and the
could
only
have a
hope
healthy
for
life.
you in the organization, I think this is quite something, is that I was thinking of this the other night after you were telling me this, that look at look at how you propelled yourself out of that, but then that is something that was never promoted for the kids. For the kids, it was you want your child, whether male or female, to go to the Bible school. Like that was the ultimate. Whether they wanted to or not, you were going to groom them for it. And
Mhm.
girls, they began getting ready at a young age we fought that in our family. Like, no, these girls are too young. And yet it didn't stop the busybodies in the leadership and the wives from trying to put that in their minds, and for the young men to go to the Bible school. And there's some who have come through the school who were out in a work somewhere like you were with your parents,
Mhm.
and then their parents
Mhm.
bring them to Bible school. They're all so proud. Like that to me is did the kid ever really want that? Did they ever get a chance to live on their own and know and have a call, if you will, of their own? And
Mhm.
would it be
Mhm.
to go there, of all places,
Right.
the place that harbors abusers and child molesters and everything?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and so I'm just so proud of you that it's quite something, because it's quite something for anyone to do. To do it and pursue it and to stick with it. To go through your first year of law school, like you were saying, it's probably very tedious because it's all in preparation for the bar, isn't it?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so
Yes.
that's it's just not easy. It's a lot of learning a whole new language and everything and way of thinking. And
Yes. And mhm.
no, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I
No,
was
no.
also going to say, like, I think it's made harder because, you talk to people, you want people to understand what you've gone through
Yeah.
growing up in a cult, how that's kind of just many times been your only frame of reference. And yes, you might get sympathy, you might get empathy, but a lot of times people, they're not going to understand that.
No.
And so you a lot of times feel, or I did, still feel alone. Like, oh, how do I deal with this? And so for me, part of the answer was just getting into therapy and just trying to kind of pick up the pieces of my life and just do the best I can. But it is hard. It is hard when when you're really trying to be understood, and you need that more than anything.
Yes.
And even some of your closest friends are like, hey, that's terrible, but they don't get it.
No. No. Unless you've been in the situation. And it really, to me, is like a wake up call for people to check their children. I don't even care if they've already gone to the Bible school or they're in there now. You don't know what's going on inside their head.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
they've never had a chance to just be them. They're just
Yes.
brother so and so. They're just sister
Yes.
so and so. Dressing like everyone else, talking like everyone else. Very surfacey, nothing on a deep personal level, because that's not encouraged. And
Right.
not really pursuing what they want. And I
Mm-hmm.
fear that it's not just other children out there, but that it's adults too that are pastoring churches, that
Mm-hmm.
they're doing it because they think that's what they were supposed to do. And a lot of times in the servicemen's homes, they push it. They push it big
Mm-hmm.
time. And anybody can make you feel like it's the call of God on
Mm-hmm.
your life. And so, did you ever have that desire or express it? Or did your parents ever try to nudge you along in that direction?
So no, my parents never did, and I'm very thankful to them for
Very
that.
thankful. Good for them.
Now, for a very, very fleeting moment, maybe when I was like 11 or 12, I thought about it. I thought that I wanted to go to Bible seminary. But yes, that did not last. And I think, to be honest with you, one thing that just really made me change my mind was, um, well, just as as kids, we kind of a lot of times want to differentiate ourselves from our parents. And I'm a junior, so that was a thing too, because people would say, "Oh, you look like your dad," or "You don't act like your dad," and this and that. And a lot of people in NTCC said that, and I think to myself, well, yes, I don't want to be a pastor like my dad. I don't want that. And also, I just felt like I didn't have the calling, quite frankly.
Right.
I've always liked people. I love talking and all of that, but I just didn't feel like I wanted to help people in that way. And I think also what being someone on the inside looking out, I was like, yeah, I don't want to stay in this. So seminary never really appealed to me. I also like, and I think another big factor was like when the Mason's daughter Veronica, she went up there, and I was very, very disappointed that she did.
How old
I
was she?
just
Was
felt
she young?
she was around 18, 17 or 18,
Okay.
17 or 18, and I was very disappointed that she went. I felt that Graham would change her, and I remember when I saw her shortly after she had gone up there, she was kind of wearing the suits and she was acting a certain way, and I was like, oh my God,
Oh,
what did they do to Veronica? What did they do to her?
yeah.
But then she stepped out of that, and she was not going to have that. But just seeing some people I cared about, and then also seeing these couples, some of them who were not much older than me, these young men and women, they were getting married, and I think it was like Anthony LaRue and someone else, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I'm not trying to start a work or get married and have kids right now. I'm trying to figure out who I am. And so yeah, that and I also I wanted to go to college. I'm the first man in my family to go to college,
Wow.
and that was just really a burning desire for me. And I got a lot of dirty licks. I got a lot of dirty licks from NTCC people.
Isn't that interesting
Uh,
considering that the whole time the
oh yeah.
Keckles groomed their son, Davis
Mm-hmm.
groomed his grandson? Because I don't ever remember them talking openly about Grant going to the Bible school at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you find out, like when I came back to doing this a couple years ago, I was like, he never went. He went
Mm-hmm.
to university. He's
Mm-hmm.
out there on LinkedIn doing all kinds of stuff. He's buying
Mm-hmm.
homes. He's doing all kinds of things that how many other kids wanted to do, wanted to
Right.
pursue a real education and have
Mm-hmm.
something to lean on instead of some of these
Yes.
old preachers who they're going to be up
Right.
the river without a paddle, without a boat.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be in a boat without a paddle. Whatever it is, they're going to be
Yes.
without a paddle. They're not going to be able to steer it because the current is just going to take them and
Right.
lead them to
Right.
death. But what will that be like for them? They have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
They have nothing.
Yes. Well, and they built it off the backs of
Yes.
people like you and I,
Yep.
and that I think is they're going to pay for that. I do believe they will reap what they've sown. I think also, as we've talked, I've thought about the intense bullying that I witnessed from NTCC that pastors were taught to uh, uh, do from their pulpit.
Yes.
I remember Davis doing it. I mean, I told you when we talked last, I remember there was this one gentleman, and Davis called him out, and he was berating him and telling him that because I don't know exactly what it was he did, but that's why he didn't have that many people in his church, and the poor guy is just nodding his head and saying, yes, sir. And I thought, as a kid, I was like, this isn't right. And how dare that man do that?
Yeah.
I was not part of the bandwagon that nodded in assent to the bullying that man was subjected to. I was also, many years later, I mean, Spencer Hayes was one of my best friends, and when I heard what him and his family had gone through in
Oh, in
Puerto
Puerto
Rico, I
Rico.
just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And I was, I mean, his dad was so loyal. I know you've interviewed his dad, and
No, I didn't
it
interview
was.
him.
Oh, you
I
didn't interview him.
no, I sent. I think I sent you a link to his testimony,
Okay.
and he
I
gave
see.
it.
I
He
see.
gave it
Yes.
online. Yeah, we were out then, and I didn't even know he wrote that until I came across it a couple years ago, and I thought, wow. And not just what he
Wow.
wrote, but the comments under it, and
Hmm.
the stuff that Sarah DeYoung and I are uncovering about financial stuff and all when we present that.
Hmm.
It's going to
Hmm.
present a picture, but what really is sad is all these people that give to world missions. There's all these people out there on the mission field, just like the Hayes were, and we
Hmm.
knew of their. We weren't even allowed to send them stuff, to send them money.
Hmm.
People just you were dissuaded from doing that, and I don't know if it's
Hmm.
still that way. And there are some that even if you try to send them stuff, they'll say no, no, that's not allowed. So they're waiting for this handout from the corporation, which takes in all this money for world missions, but
Hmm.
who's getting it and what are they getting?
Right.
There's no
Hmm.
transparency, there's no accountability, and it's sad. It's sad that those are the stories. There's not
Hmm.
one jubilant, triumphant missionary story that I think I've ever heard. It's always of, even when I first met the Ashmores over in the Philippines, they were living so modestly with nothing, with nothing. So even if you have a savings, you're probably going to blow through it.
Hmm.
Everybody blows through their savings when they go out on the field, no matter how big or small it is.
Right. Right. And just seeing
And we
just
see
the
that, right?
great wealth. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the
It's
wealth of
almost
the Keckles,
flaunted.
and
It's almost
it
flaunted.
is. You're absolutely right. And not almost, it was. I mean, I
Yep.
remember Davis's what was it, Burgundy Cadillac, and how I would always call it the Red Sea incident because it just seemed like everyone partied when he came through.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, yeah, yeah, on the campground.
On the
And I thought to
campground,
myself,
yeah.
yes, on the campground. And I thought to myself, I was like, they're always talking about idolatry, but isn't that idolatry? I mean, this guy
For
is
real.
just going through. I mean, people are worshiping him. I mean, people literally worship this man. I
Yep.
remember he used to talk about, the suit this guy got him, or the cufflinks, or this and that. And I thought, isn't this idolatry?
It's so
And the
backwards.
Keckles, yeah, the Keckles, I always felt Michael Keckle wanted Davis's job. I mean, you know, I always just, I don't know, as a kid, I just always felt like, wow, this Davis's son-in-law wants to be him.
Yeah.
And Tanya Keckle, she had me deceived for such a long time. I'm just gonna be real, I don't think she's a good person.
No, she's not.
And
She's
I
not a
think
good person.
she's a bully. She's a
She's a
bully.
bully.
She's a bully. And she, I came to find out, she said some pretty, just not very kind things about me. But she's done that to so many people.
She's done it to so many.
So many people.
It's how they
And,
deflect from. So we don't want you to notice that there's a caste system here, and that we're at the top of it, and we have all these
Right.
things, and you are living like scum of the earth for the Lord.
Mhm.
And it's not that. It's a corporate venture, and these are people who want to protect their lifestyle and their
Absolutely.
power. And
Mhm.
there's no other way to explain it. Mike and Tanya Keckle, Joe Olson, Phil Kinson, even Davis had decades to make things right, to come to terms with what they were doing. Who didn't think it was left a sour taste in your mouth when you would come up to the chapel and the Keckles and the Davises would come screeching up late. The brothers would come running out with umbrellas and open the door, close the door for them. Meanwhile, someone who's in the church, been there forever, is living low, like low rent. And they're parking way, way down and trudging up in all kinds of stupid Washington weather. No one there to greet them with an umbrella or help them in or park their car or something. Here, you park up front. No, there's designated parking. There's designated seats in the church. Keckle said, no, there's not anymore. Hey, good for him. That's such a small thing. You're still robbing people of their money and telling them they're going to go to hell if they don't pay it. And
no, go ahead.
no, I'm gonna hijack this with a rant, and I don't want to do that.
No, you're fine. You're fine. No, I mean, I love how we're kind of building off of one another, because I'm thinking of things as you're, getting things off of your heart too. Just how, let's say, quote unquote, professional people looked. The women with their dresses and their poofs or their nice hairstyles, and the men clean cut and with suits, but so many of them were just empty shells. That's
Yes.
what I realized.
Yes.
And I realized that, a lot of the people in the quote unquote world, okay, maybe, maybe they were alcoholics. Maybe they were tattooed, maybe they were gay. Maybe, who knows what they had done, but they were some of the most beautiful people that I met.
Yes.
They were the people who saw me, who made me believe that I had another lease on life.
Yes.
It wasn't the people, and a lot of them in NTCC, who looked the part, and I tried to have a conversation with them, and I realized there was nothing there.
No.
But it was those people that I had been taught to always distrust and fear. Those were the people who welcomed me.
Yes.
And I'll always be grateful to them. I'll always be grateful to those people. And there's so many. I couldn't even name them all. I probably don't even remember them all, but who helped me to get to where I am today. And this confidence I have, this sureness of myself, I didn't have it.
Right.
I didn't have it for most of my life. I didn't. I would be lying to you to say I had it. I didn't.
How could you develop it when you were around people who checked their personal identities at the door, as we all did, and we just became the shell you were speaking of? We dressed the part. We had the jargon. It's creepy to look back on now. It's creepy to look at the people in the churches now and say, oh, I hope you have an awakening soon, because when you see it, you are not going to be happy with the fact of what you see.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny though, right? Because a lot of those folks, they couldn't hide who they really were. So the mask would be up for a while, but then there would always be little things.
Yes.
They'd slip up. They'd gossip about someone. They'd, bully someone.
Yes.
They'd say this snide remark. They'd say, that R word, right? Racist. I mean, right? Like with Davis, I mean, how crazy to say, oh, God loves everybody, but, oh, well, if you're a white and black couple, don't get together, right? These different things, oh, we're colorblind and all this stuff. And I just, it's sad. I mean, I heard from different friends in the church, I mean, including Veronica, who's no longer in the church, but how she was discouraged. She was in an interracial marriage. Her son is biracial.
Yeah.
But just little things like that. And I know I might be going on a little rant here, and I apologize.
No, because that was what was taught. Davis said it in classes. He would try to give a caveat that, well, it's because it's going to be difficult for them in the ministry. But at the time, it wasn't that way. Maybe back in the 70s, but not by the time we got to school and some of the people who arrived there as a biracial couple. What are you telling them?
Right. And I mean, and the Mason's daughter telling me. I mean, she told me a lot of things about Keckle, and I believe it. I believe it.
Right.
I always. I mean, I saw him up close and personal. Let's just say that, and I saw that he was not the person that a lot of people thought he was. He's just that textbook bully.
Yep, he is.
And
He shows that all the
he is.
time.
Yeah, he does. He does. He
He
does.
can't even
And the
hide it now.
judgment. Yeah, the sneering, the just all these different things, and I was like, yeah, this is not a good guy. This is not someone I would want to be under.
Mm-mm.
You know, all of them, and I just remember, I remember, oh my goodness, Tracy, those uncomfortable rides. Literally, they were so cringe when I'd be between my mom and maybe one of the board members' wives, let's say the Olsons or not the Keckles, but I'm some other ones, the Johnsons maybe.
Johnsons.
And yes, I would just.
They were very
so,
cold, like
yes.
frigid. I was thinking of that the other day, that was not a warm and welcoming person.
No.
But they're on the board.
Not either. No.
But they were on the board, and I think the board was just yes men for Davis, and it's yes men now for Keckle. That's all it is.
I remember years ago. I don't remember exactly when it was. It probably was, I don't know, before I left. Well, it definitely had to have been. But I had spoken with Johnson's grandson, and I was surprised. I was really surprised that he was like, "No, I'm not going to stay in that." I think he said he wanted to start his own business. And I think that was kind of like another eye-opening moment for me, because I thought, wow, it was, like the church elite.
Their kids.
Their children. I thought they had everything put together, but I was wrong. I realized, oh no, these kids went through a lot of stuff too.
Yep, they did.
They did. Yeah, they absolutely did, and a lot of them didn't want to have any part of NTCC. I just remember too, one of the sisters in the church telling me years ago. I think I was a teenager. She said, Ruben, she said, a lot of church kids, they end up leaving, and a lot of people who didn't grow up in church, they end up going to church, and that ended up kind of being a little prophetic for me, because now I believe in God, but I don't want to have anything to do with church.
No.
My heart has been so turned against it, and I've just seen so many, just terrible experiences. I mean, I think you mentioned Devonshire, and I remember one time, I think it was either him or Teeman or both, and they had like come up to pray with me, and I just remember how uncomfortable I felt. I just felt like I don't want to tell these men what I've done, or
no.
I never could take them into my confidence. It was just like something against, like when you feel something against your spirit,
Yes.
So, yeah.
Two people who have questionable pasts in this group, and to be there trying to do anything with someone else is the height of hypocrisy.
Absolutely.
It's a joke.
Absolutely.
And some people sense it, and as soon as they know that you're someone that is not going to be persuaded to their side, they have no use for you. That's across the whole organization. That's the way it works. Hey, Ruben, I'm going to have to close this out for tonight.
And this ends part 1. Thanks for listening.